Welcome to a special Branching Out, Growing Together offshoot episode. These episodes take us beyond our usual format, whether it's a personal reflection, a unique story, or a deep dive with a guest outside our scheduled interviews. And now, here's your host, Melanie Jones.
2 weeks ago, we released an episode all about the idea of finding your why, what motivates you to plant trees, to restore land, to step into a different kind of agriculture. That episode was sparked in part by a panel I'll be part of at the upcoming Chestnut Growers of America and Northern Nut Growers Association Joint Conference. The panel question was simple: what are the advantages of tree crops? And my answer: it depends on your lens. In preparation for the panel, I've been mulling a few questions over in my mind around why any of us do this, why chestnuts, why tree crops, why now? And I don't mean this as a test, I mean it as a compass, because in this kind of slow, perennial work, it's easy to forget where you're headed if you don't know what's pulling you forward. All of this has brought me back to a book I love, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and to the conversations we've had over the years with people who didn't just start chestnut farms, they changed their lives to do it. People like Brad and Sandy Russell. I've had them on this podcast before, and their story threads through several of our episodes. They transitioned from corporate life in Bentonville to building a full-scale chestnut operation in the Rocky Hills of the Ozarks. Recently, the two of them were featured in a video for the Arkansas Farm Bureau, which highlights their story. It's beautifully done, and the Russells speak so plainly, so personally about their why. Seeing them featured that way stirred something deeper for me because I remember where it started. I remember Brad talking, not with a camera crew in the orchard, but sitting with me on the podcast, sharing about a few trees he thought might die. That moment stuck with me because it echoed something in our own story too. So for the episode today, I want to go a little deeper on this subject, finding your why. Not the marketing pitch for chestnuts, not the textbook benefits, but the question under it all: what drives us to do this work season after season? Let's sit with that. As I mentioned before, there was a moment during my previous episode with Brad Russell that really stayed with me. Brad shared about planting trees he thought might die. He put them in a clearing, didn't water them, didn't baby them. He called them his left-for-dead trees, but they grew. And when he came back and saw them thriving, something shifted. The land was speaking, or maybe it had always been speaking. He was just finally quiet enough to listen. That hit me hard because our store here at EBB Farms didn't start with a clean business plan either. We bought a piece of land in Kentucky while living in Atlanta. We planted trees mostly to make it feel alive again, to build a place our family could come to, breathe in, and feel the rhythm of the seasons. It wasn't strategic, it was a gut pull, and that pull over time became a purpose. It became United Chestnuts. It became this podcast, this conversation, this movement we're part of. But we didn't know that in year one. We just knew the trees were still standing. People reach out to us all the time, new growers, curious landowners, folks trying to decide what to do with a few acres, and they almost always start with what? What variety should I plant? How fast do they grow? What's the market price per pound? Fair questions. But here's what I always say back: what's your why? Because this isn't soybeans. This isn't plug and play agriculture. Tree crops take years. You'll spend seasons waiting. You'll watch deer eat your best seedlings. You'll mess up irrigation. You'll prune too early or too late. And in those moments, data won't save you. Your why will. So if your motivation is brittle, it'll snap the first time something goes wrong. That's why I sometimes recommend people try a simple exercise, borrowed from a video and coach I found on social media, Coach Tori. You'll write down why you want to grow chestnuts, then ask yourself why that reason matters, and do it again 7 times. You'd be amazed at what comes out. It's not always polished or poetic, but it's usually honest. And that honesty, that's what gets you through the long seasons. You sit down thinking, I want to grow chestnuts because they're gluten-free, or I want to farm as a retirement project, but then you keep going, you ask why again, And the answer shifts. By the fifth or sixth round, you're not talking about flower or free time anymore. You're writing about your kids' health, about the land your grandkids will run on, about wanting to build something slower, steadier, more rooted. That's what I've seen in so many of you. Some folks come to chestnuts through health. They've got food sensitivities in the family. They want a staple crop that nourishes instead of just fills. And let me say this clearly, that's a real why. It matters. For many, it's how the door opens, but those whys tend to grow. You plant for flower, then you notice how the roots hold your slope in place. You watch wildlife return or read about carbon drawdown and run your own numbers. Suddenly, your why has more than one layer, and that's the value of this kind of reflection. It's not about clever answers, it's about knowing what holds when everything else gets hard. And I think that's what separates people who stay in this work from those who don't. People like Brad and Sandy Russell, and possibly people like yourself, dear listener, because you felt something shift on your land, because the long game makes more sense than the fast one. I have the Russells' full story linked in the show notes and YouTube description if you want to hear it straight from them. But whether your why is food security, ecosystem restoration, a personal sanctuary, or just the deep, inexplicable urge to plant something that will outlive you. Start there. Name it. Write it down. Ask again. Let the answer take shape in its own time. That's what we're building this whole thing around. Wherever you are in this journey, whether you're eyeing your first seedling or walking rows you planted a decade ago, pause for a second. Ask yourself the deeper version of the question. Not, why chestnuts? But, what do I want this land to mean? Who am I becoming through this work? What am I planting that might outlive me? Because your why might start with food, carbon, or restoring a hillside no one else believed in. But if you keep asking, it often leads somewhere quieter, more personal. A pull you can't quite explain, but can't ignore either. And that's what direction really is. Not a 5-year plan, a feeling that stays with you. Even in year 3, when the trees aren't fruiting, the numbers wobble, or when no one else understands why you're doing this. So if you're ready to sit with your own why, we've put together a simple reflection tool you can download. It's the same 7-question process I've talked about today. No perfect answers, just a place to begin. You'll find that in the show notes, along with a piece I wrote called The Advantages of Tree Crops, and links to check out my past episodes with the Russells. Thank you for listening. Thanks for planting. And as always, keep branching out.
Thanks for joining us for this offshoot episode of Branching Out, Growing Together. If you enjoyed this, be sure to check out our regular episodes where we continue to explore growth, connection, and the chestnut industry. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep growing.